My name is Robbie Luckett. I'm director of the Margaret Walker Center and professor of history at Jackson State University. It's my great honor and privilege to call Dr. Doris Derby a mentor, colleague, collaborator, friend, and shero. What's amazing in my mind is that I didn't meet Dr. Derby until 2014. It feels like I knew her my entire life. It's actually hard for me to imagine a time when she wasn't in my life. All of you who knew and loved her like I did understand that she was intentional about being present in the lives of the people she cared about, and she could occupy a lot of brilliant space. We met for the first time ahead of the 50th anniversary of Freedom Summer. She was working with the Mississippi Department of Archives and History to donate artifacts and images to the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum, and she had an exhibit that was up in New Orleans at the time. I thought it would be perfect for it to come to Mississippi for the Freedom Summer 50th. I jumped at that opportunity, and over the last 8 years, I've been lucky enough to curate and produce 5 of her exhibitions at Jackson State. Over that time, Dr. Derby immersed herself as a central figure in my life. I visited her home several times, and I had the good pleasure of breaking bread with her and her husband, Bob Banks, a man I deeply admire and respect and send my love to. I remember the first time I went to her house and got the full tour. If you've ever been there, you know it's a museum itself. I ended up being there for more than 5 hours that first time. The most amazing thing, perhaps, about Dr. Derby was her mind. It felt like she could remember nearly every person and every photo she had taken, tell you a story about them. Still, while she was looking at a picture, she might have an epiphany and have to go write down a note about something or someone she remembered in it. And as my friend, photography professor Mark Giles said to me, she may have been the single most prolific photographer of the modern civil rights movement in Mississippi in the 1960s. We're talking about lots and lots, thousands upon thousands of images. Of all the things we lost when Dr. Derby passed away, losing her memory and knowledge is one of the most tragic. I'm grateful I had the opportunity to interview her this past year as part of an oral history project for the Mississippi Arts Commission on folk life and the civil rights movement. We talked about her entire life, what brought her to Mississippi in 1961, what led her into academia and to Georgia State. We talked about her family, her art, her activism, her time working at Jackson State for Margaret Walker and her Black Studies Institute. We talked about the images she took of the aftermath of the 1970 police murders on our campus. An exhibit of those photos we produced and is now traveling the country. We talked for so long that we had to do a second round. It came out to be over 3 hours long. We brought her and Bob to Jackson State for gallery talks for every exhibit of hers that we hosted, sometimes for multiple gallery talks for one exhibit. And even in the midst of the pandemic, and as she battled this terrible disease of cancer, she joined us for Zoom panels and what were always vibrant online discussions. I'll never forget the 2020 Association of African American Museums Conference, which I chaired and had to be virtual because of COVID. We had a Zoom reception with the DJ, and Dr. Derby was the hit of the party, dancing the night away in her little square on the Zoom screen in the bottom corner. I love Dr. Doris Derby, and I miss her greatly. Miss her phone calls, miss her voice. In fact, I knew that when she called, I couldn't answer if I was going somewhere or had something to do. I always had to make time to talk to her. Everyone who knew her knows that a conversation with Dr. Derby was never just going to be a short one. She was demanding but loving, serious but joyful, committed to justice and to her family and friends. She was a role model for me, and like I said, a shero. Dr. Derby has a quote on the wall of the Mississippi Civil Rights Museum. Quote, "People in the movement generally were an extended family of adopted brothers and sisters, cousins and friends who learned from each other and who were committed to each other and to the struggle. The work, commitment, joy, songs, battles, tragedies, strategizing, gains, losses, and the horrors of violence and intimidation glued us together, and the circle kept getting bigger. As in the African-American tradition, there was always room for more. I will forever be grateful that she made room for me in that circle." Thank you.